Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to break down the Thursday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings for Week 8. We got Week 8 kicking off Thursday night with the Falcons and the Panthers. Pretty interesting game, pretty high total here between these two teams, two pretty bad defensive teams, 51.5 total, pretty close 2.5 point spread as well. Might see the return of Christian McCaffrey on Thursday night. That is something we're going to have to monitor heading into Thursday night. I'm recording this video Wednesday, so we don't have word yet whether McCaffrey is going to play. They did come out and say they're hopeful that he plays, but we'll just have to wait and see there. I'll definitely talk about, if McCaffrey's in, if I like him, if he's out, who we want to go to. Obviously Mike Davis going to be the guy there, but yeah, before we do get started with the video, as always, guys, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do enjoy my videos and they really help you and you want to get more content from me, you want to see more that I have to offer, I do have stuff to offer on Patreon. You can check that out. Link down below in the description if that does interest you. Obviously, it is optional, but for those of you that are interested, the Patreon is linked down below in the description. But yeah, guys, we got another big showdown slate for Thursday night. DraftKings once again running a Millionaire Maker contest, $2.25 million in total prizes with $1 million to first, $15 entry fee, I believe. Yeah, $15 entry fee. So, I assume DraftKings is going to keep running out Millionaire Makers for every Monday night and Thursday night game as long as, the action is still there. As long as these contests aren't overlaying, like DraftKings is going to keep putting them out there. So yeah, I expect the action to be pretty high. Let's go ahead and, take a look at this slate. We'll start off at the top. So Christian McCaffrey is kind of the big question mark for Thursday night. Will he be able to play? Is he going to be back for this game? The last word that we got, like I said, I'm recording this video on Wednesday. Last word I saw was that he returned to practice Tuesday. He actually was, taking hits, like he was taking contact. I'm pretty sure Monday he had like a non-contact jersey on, but he took it off Tuesday. He was, I don't know if it was like a full practice, but he returned to practice, which is a positive sign. They said they're hopeful that he plays. I think my best guess is that he does play. CMC himself said that he wanted to play. And obviously, if Christian McCaffrey plays, this guy is just on another level when it comes to, touches, involvement in the offense. He's only played 2 games this season, but those 2 games he scored 28 and 24 DraftKings points, 26 and 22 touches in those 2 games. Last season, he was literally the number 1 fantasy running back. He was drafted number 1 overall in season long this year for a good reason. When Christian McCaffrey is healthy, he has the highest floor out of anyone in the league, in my opinion. He has one of the highest ceilings as well. Like, he's just so involved. He's going to get 15 to 20 carries. He's going to get 5 to 6 targets. Now, with it being his first game back from injury, assuming he does play, what is his workload going to be like? Are they going to give him, 25 touches? I think that is a bit of a question mark because Mike Davis has been playing very well. I don't think Mike Davis is just going to go, to the bench and just be a bench warmer. I think Mike Davis will be involved. Is it going to be those first 2 games, Christian McCaffrey was playing like 80, 90% of the snaps. Last season, he had some games where he literally didn't come off the field, played 100% of the snaps. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be probably like a 70-30 split to begin with, and then maybe later on towards the season we'll see like an 80-20 split between McCaffrey and Davis. I still think Davis is going to be involved, but if McCaffrey plays, I have no interest in Mike Davis. McCaffrey himself, I think, does become interesting. He is the most expensive player on the slate, so there's obviously some question marks with him being the most expensive player on the slate, with it being his first game back from injury. Do you want to pay up for him? I'm kind of interested to see what his ownership's going to be if he does play here. I think people might be scared to pay up for him because it is his first game back from injury, and, I'm looking for any edge I can find on these showdown slates. So if I'm going to get Christian McCaffrey lower owned than he should be, I'm going to roster him if he's active and playing, even if he is somewhat limited, just because he has so much upside. He could break a slate even on, 15 touches. So if McCaffrey plays and he's not like on a really hard limit, I do have interest in him at 11,800. Talking about the 2 quarterbacks, though, Matt Ryan and Teddy Bridgewater, I say it pretty much every showdown slate, every video. The quarterbacks are always in play. The quarterbacks are usually going to give you, by far, like close to the highest floors you can get because quarterbacks are just involved on every offensive play pretty much. Every passing touchdown, quarterbacks are getting passing touchdowns. They have just such a high floor. It's very hard for quarterbacks to kill your lineup. Now, do these 2 quarterbacks have a higher ceiling than like Christian McCaffrey? Probably not, but, even a bad game from Matt Ryan, he can still give you like 15, 16 points. Same with Teddy Bridgewater. If I just had to just choose one of the two, I think I'd honestly prefer Teddy Bridgewater. I like Bridgewater, gives us a little bit of rushing upside. He's not a rusher. He's not like a rushing quarterback by any means, but if he gets under pressure, he can scramble, whereas Matt Ryan, he's kind of like a statue under center, doesn't really scramble much. You need Matt Ryan to throw for 300-plus yards and multiple touchdowns to really put up his ceiling game, whereas Teddy Bridgewater, he can give you 250 and 2 through the air, and then he can give you 30 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Like, he has that in him. We saw him do it against Arizona. He did have a pretty solid game against this Falcons team earlier this year. I do like Teddy Bridgewater quite a bit. But really, it all just comes down to roster construction. If you're playing one of the Falcons receivers at captain, like if you're playing Calvin Ridley or Julio Jones at captain, you probably want to get Matt Ryan in those lineups. If you're playing, Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore at captain, then you probably want to get Bridgewater in those lineups. But me personally, I usually want to get at least one of the two quarterbacks in my lineups, and if I can, I like trying to play both quarterbacks just because it's really hard for both quarterbacks to fail, just because quarterbacks have such a high floor. But then the receivers, I think all the receivers look really good in this game. It's really a good matchup on both sides. Both these teams are pretty bad defensively. We saw these teams play earlier this season. Julio was actually out for this game, and Calvin Ridley went for 8 and 136, 24 DK points against the Panthers, got 10 targets in a game that Julio was out. Ridley's he's definitely been safer than Julio this season. He really only has one bad game, and that was against Green Bay. You take out that game, and he's had at least 18 DraftKings points in every game so far this season. He's been incredibly consistent. He does give you a very high floor. He has a high ceiling as well. I like Ridley a lot, but Julio is a bit cheaper, and, me personally, I still think, although he's, always dealing with injuries, Julio is still one of the best wide receivers in the league, in my opinion. When he's healthy, he's pretty much unguardable. He has insane upside. We saw against Minnesota in his first game back from injury. 8, 137 and 2, 36 DraftKings points. We could get that type of game from Julio here. This Carolina secondary is not one that I'm concerned with at all. I don't think they really have anyone that can match up and stop Julio one-on-one. So Julio, honestly, might be one of my favorite plays at captain just because I think he's so talented. He's listed as questionable, but they always list him as questionable pretty much. He's always going to be limited. We've seen he's always limited in practice during the week. He's on the injury report heading into Sunday, and then he usually winds up playing. I'm assuming he's going to play on Thursday, so I like Julio quite a bit. You really can't go wrong with either Falcons receivers because both guys should get plenty of volume. Both guys have really high ceilings in this matchup. If I can only choose one, though, I think Julio is the guy I do prefer. But really, it all just comes down to roster construction. If I have enough money to pay up for Ridley, maybe I'll try and get Ridley, but I like the little bit of savings you get dropping down to Julio. And then you have the Panthers receivers, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. Both these guys also look very appealing. It's a really good matchup for both guys. This Atlanta secondary has been so bad this season. They haven't really been able to slow down anyone. We saw Robbie Anderson have a really good game against Atlanta earlier this year, 8 and 112, 22 DK points. He got 12 targets. He's actually been, the safest of the Panthers receivers this season. His volume has been so secure. He's pretty much been like their wide receiver one. He leads the team in targets. He's got double-digit DraftKings points in every game so far this season. Definitely like Robbie Anderson here, but kind of similar to the Ridley Julio thing. You do get some savings dropping down to DJ Moore, and I still think DJ Moore is a guy I want to try and get into some of my lineups. I know he hasn't been nearly as safe as Robbie Anderson. I know his volume hasn't been secure as Robbie Anderson, but we saw last week DJ Moore still has big play upside. He caught a really long touchdown. He also got a sweep touchdown near the goal line. Did score twice last week. Had 25 DK points against the Saints. 8,200. We're probably going to need those savings here because, I've looked at this slate already, and there are not many value plays you feel too confident in. I don't really want to play the defenses in this game, so this feels like one of those slates where you're definitely going to probably be playing at least one of the two kickers. I'm going to really need all the savings I can get, so I definitely like dropping down $1,000 to DJ Moore over Robbie Anderson. I like that, DJ Moore's been scoring recently. He's been getting more targets. He only got 5 targets last week, but still was very efficient with those. He did get 11 targets the week before. Like I said earlier, this Atlanta secondary, not one I'm concerned with at all. He also had a really good game against Atlanta when they played earlier this season, so I really like DJ Moore. Between the two, big Carolina receivers, I think I'd actually prefer DJ Moore over Robbie Anderson. Between the two Atlanta receivers, I think I'd prefer Julio over Ridley. But really, you can't go wrong with any of those four guys. All four look really, really good here. It's a really good matchup for all of them. Do want to talk about Mike Davis. So, like I said at the beginning, if Christian McCaffrey plays and is active, I have no interest in Mike Davis. But if Christian McCaffrey is out again and does not play, I think Mike Davis is definitely a guy we can look to. He was incredibly disappointing last week against the Saints, and he's kind of, started to trend down. He was on such a good stretch, had 4 really good games with Christian McCaffrey out. And then, these last 2 weeks against the Bears and the Saints, he's really, really struggled. But those have been 2 pretty tough matchups. Now he gets to face a Falcons team that he went off against in Week 5. 16 carries for 89 yards, 9 catches for 60 yards, 29 Draftkings points when they played against the Falcons in Week 5. This Falcons team has always been a team you want to take opposing running backs against. They really struggle to defend pass-catching running backs, and we saw that be the case with Mike Davis getting 9 catches for 60 yards against them. He's pretty much played Christian McCaffrey's role. Like, he's playing 85-90% of the snaps. He's handling almost all the running back touches. I know he's kind of been trending down, but if Christian McCaffrey is out again, I really like Mike Davis. I think he's a very strong play. If Christian McCaffrey plays, though, I have no interest in Davis. So that's just kind of a wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see there. I definitely have interest in McCaffrey, trying to pay up for him if he's able to go, even if he's going to be somewhat limited, because I think people might be hesitant to go there with it being his first game back from injury. Really, the Carolina backfield is one of the big question marks that we're going to need to watch heading into Thursday night's game, because really that's going to decide a lot. Mike Davis is going to be unplayable if Christian McCaffrey plays, but Mike Davis himself will be a very strong option if McCaffrey, winds up out. But then on the other side, the Atlanta running backs, I don't really have any interest in Brian Hill, but Todd Gurley, I think, is definitely interesting in this matchup. He went off earlier this year against Carolina, had his best game of the season, 14 carries for 121 yards, also got 4 catches for 29 yards. He did get a touchdown, 28 Draftkings points. Very similar to, like I said, we take it running backs against Atlanta. Well, the Panthers have really struggled to defend running backs as well. Last season, they were dead last in run DVOA. This season, they've been towards the bottom of the league against the run. This has just always been a team that has really struggled to defend, running backs to stop the run, and that's been the case so far this season. Whether you think Todd Gurley's good or not, it's a really good matchup for him, and he's probably going to get 20-plus touches. He's been a workhorse running back, especially lately. 25 touches against Detroit, 23 the week before that. Like, they are involving him in the passing game as well. He's getting, 3, 4, 5 targets, going to get the goal line work. Let's say Christian McCaffrey's out. If I have to just choose one of the 2 running backs, whether it's Davis or Gurley, it is very close. I have a lot of interest in both. I think I'd rather play Gurley between the 2, but I really like both guys. Obviously, though, if McCaffrey plays, I'm not going to be looking to Mike Davis. But Todd Gurley, I think, is a very strong play here against a bad Panthers run defense. I think he's one of the guys you can look to in that 8K range. Really, pretty much everyone from DJ Moore up, I think, is a really strong play. Like, I really have nothing to say negative about any of these guys above 8K. I guess the only thing I have to say is, just watch what happens with McCaffrey. If he plays, then Mike Davis becomes, a guy I'm not going to play. But other than that, like, if McCaffrey plays, I have interest in him. Obviously, both quarterbacks are good plays. Julio and Ridley, I really like here. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, I like a lot. Todd Gurley is in a great spot. Mike Davis, if McCaffrey's out, is a really strong play. Like, it's really hard to argue against anyone above 8K. Finding value, though, that's where it's going to be tough on this Showdown slate, because I think, all these guys are strong plays, but we can't play all these guys. We got to find some cheap plays. Hayden Hurst is somewhat cheap. He's 6,400. He's definitely been, somewhat of a disappointment, though, this season. I thought coming into the year, like, Hayden Hurst was going to finish as, like, a top 10 fantasy tight end, and right now that's not looking like it's going to be the case. He still gets a very secure role in this offense. Like, he's playing 80% of the snaps. He's running a lot of routes, but he's just not getting the targets and not getting, the involvement that I would like. I thought he was going to be a guy that would consistently see 6 to 8 targets every week. But, he's kind of been getting the volume. 7 targets last week, 4 targets the week before that, 6 and 6 the weeks before that. Really, though, he hasn't been scoring touchdowns. So far this season, he only has 3 touchdowns. Even though he's getting 7-6 targets, he's not, like, they haven't been very efficient. Like, the game against Carolina, he got 6 targets, but he only caught 2 of those balls for 8 yards, finished with 2 Draftkings points. he's kind of been a disappointment this season. He is somewhat cheap, though. He's 6,400. You could definitely look to Hayden Hurst, but if I can find the salary, I would probably rather get up to like DJ Moore or Todd Gurley. Hurst is probably going to be a guy I'm kind of underweight on. I don't really see myself playing much of him. Really, for me, it's the guys 8K and above, and then, it's the value plays like Curtis Samuel, Russell Gage, the kickers we'll talk about. So Curtis Samuel, 5,400. I do have some interest in as a cheap option. I don't think I've played Curtis Samuel at all this year, at least not when the Panthers have been on the main slate, but this is obviously not a main slate. This is a one-game showdown slate. So Curtis Samuel does become intriguing. 5 and 6 targets the last 2 weeks. He actually got a rushing touchdown last week. And it wasn't like on an end around. He actually lined up in the backfield and got a rushing touchdown. It's good to see that he's still been involved in the offense. His targets are nowhere near as secure as Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore, but he's also not the same price as those guys. He's only 5,400. He's still going to play a pretty good amount of snaps. He's going to run a good amount of routes. He will get some end-around runs. They'll involve him in the running game as well, whether that's on end-arounds or lining him up in the backfield. At 5,400, I think he's in play as a value option. Russell Gage as well. This is a guy that I rarely play when Julio and Ridley are both healthy, but we have a single-game showdown slate. We don't have a ton of value plays to look to. Gage is still going to be out there for probably 60-70% of the snaps. Last week, I think he only played he didn't play many snaps last week. He only played 32% of their snaps in the game against the Lions, but he was still targeted 7 times. He's probably going to see similar volume to Curtis Samuel, anywhere from like 5 to 7 targets. For 4,200 against the Panthers, you could definitely look to Russell Gage. It's a good matchup. It's tough to find value on the showdown slate. Like, you're not going to feel confident in really anyone else under Russell Gage. Obviously, the kickers you could play. The kickers, though, do have pretty low ceilings. Like, you're most likely going to get anywhere from 5 to 10 points from your kicker. Rarely do you see them go for like 20 points. I mean, Younghoe Koo, 20 points against the Vikings, like that's normally not going to happen. Joey Sly, he's probably good for anywhere from like 7 to 10 points. I mean, sometimes you'll see kickers put up over double digits. I think this is a slate though where, playing one of the 2 kickers does make a lot of sense just because we don't have much good value under, 6K. There's not a lot of guys under 6K you're very confident in. Like Ian Thomas, he's barely been involved this year. His best game this season was 8 DraftKings points, and that was because he scored a touchdown. Like, it's hard to trust Ian Thomas. Brian Hill, he's probably going to get anywhere from 6 to 8 touches, just kind of spelling Todd Gurley whenever Gurley needs a rest. But, unless Gurley gets hurt, you don't feel very confident in Brian Hill. You don't really want to play backup running backs. I rarely do play backup running backs on these showdown slates. Like Zacchaeus, I'm not playing with Ridley and Julio healthy. Ito Smith isn't going to be on the field enough. He's a third-string running back. Like, there's just not any good value on this showdown slate. So it's really tough. I think playing one of the 2 kickers makes plenty of sense. Honestly, normally I don't like playing both kickers, but with how bad the value is, I wouldn't mind playing both kickers in this game just because I think both kickers could outscore Samuel. They could outscore Gage. They could outscore, all the guys priced below them. I don't think I want to play the defenses. I just don't see this being a game where, defenses are going to be a target of mine. Both these teams are pretty bad defensively. I think this game could actually be a shootout. I think it could definitely go over the 51 total. Normally defenses are actually, you want to target defenses in shootouts because that means you're going to have a lot of dropbacks. You're going to have the quarterbacks throwing the ball, which leads to sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, stuff like that. I just don't really want to play either defenses. I'd rather play the kickers, honestly. So, yeah, it's a weird showdown slate. There's a lot of great plays, above 8K. But once you get down below DJ Moore, then it starts to get really, really thin. Not a lot of guys you feel too confident in. I would say my favorite values are probably Samuel, Gage, and then the 2 kickers. That's probably it for me. I'm not really going to play the defenses. I'm not going to play Ian Thomas or Brian Hill or Zacchaeus. So, yeah, I think we covered the player pool, from top to bottom, talked about all the playable options. Let's hit on roster construction real quick just before we do end the video. Talk about how I'm looking to build out my lineups. I mentioned it earlier. I really like Julio. Between the 2 Atlanta receivers, I think Julio is the guy I prefer. You can't go wrong with Calvin Ridley, though, but if I can only choose one, I do prefer Julio. So let's build out a lineup with Julio at captain. If we are playing Julio at captain, we want to correlate that lineup correctly and play Matt Ryan, because if we're assuming Julio puts up a big game and goes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's very likely that, Matt Ryan is throwing him the ball and contributing to those 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you do want to correlate your lineups correctly that way. Once we plug in Julio at captain and then pair him with Matt Ryan, we have just over 6K remaining per player. I mean, we're going to have to play someone for cheap, so I think, going to one of the two kickers. Normally, I don't have a preference. I just kind of play whichever one fits. Since we played the two Atlanta guys, I guess we'll just plug in Younghoe Koo. I mean, he scored more fantasy points this season than Joey Sly, so we'll plug in Koo as a value play. That gets us up to 68.33 remaining per player. I talked about it earlier. I like DJ Moore a lot. I like both Carolina receivers a good amount. If I can only play one, though, I think I'd rather go to DJ Moore. Once we plug in Moore, that leaves us 61.50 remaining per player for our last two spots. Not going to have enough to play Teddy Bridgewater. Not really going to have enough to play Ridley. If we plug one of those two guys in, that's only going to leave us like 2K, and there's really no one I want to play down here. If we plug in Robbie Anderson, though, that leaves us 3,100. Like I said earlier, I don't really want to play Ian Thomas, so I don't want to go there. If we plug in Mike Davis, though, 8,800, obviously assuming that Christian McCaffrey's out, that leaves us enough to play one of the defenses, but I don't love the defenses. I don't really want to play Todd Gurley with Matt Ryan and Julio. Like, if I'm assuming Julio has a big game, it's unlikely that Gurley also has a big game. So maybe we need to change something up here. Let's see. Maybe we'll go like full-on punt with both kickers and maybe play Bridgewater in this lineup. So let's put in both kickers for cheap with Bridgewater. That leaves us 5,900 left. And then we could play Curtis Samuel. So, that's a lineup that we could do where we get both quarterbacks in. If you're playing both quarterbacks, they are pretty expensive. You're definitely going to have to play some value. But, one of the two kickers is fine with me. I wouldn't mind playing both just because the value is so bad on this Showdown slate. Maybe let's not go with like a star-studded lineup, though. Maybe let's try and build off some of these mid-tier guys, maybe like a Mike Davis or a Todd Gurley. I talked about it earlier. I really like this spot for Gurley. I like how bad, I like the matchup and how bad Carolina has been against the run this season. If we're playing Gurley at captain, you don't really have to pair one of the quarterbacks because Gurley, it's unlikely that he catches multiple touchdowns. A guy like Christian McCaffrey, on the other hand, if I'm playing him at captain, I wouldn't mind playing Bridgewater because we know McCaffrey, he can catch 8 to 10 balls. Even Mike Davis could catch 8 to 10 balls if McCaffrey isn't out. But Todd Gurley, probably don't want to correlate him with Matt Ryan because those guys kind of, negatively correlate. But since we're playing Gurley, maybe we want to run it back with Bridgewater on the other side. Like I said earlier, I normally want at least one of the two quarterbacks in my lineup. So let's plug in Bridgewater. Maybe pair him with one of his two receivers, whether that's Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. Like I said earlier, I do like DJ Moore quite a bit. So we'll plug him in at 8,200. Maybe we try not to get in. We're going to have to play one of the two kickers. Like, there's really no way around it. I was trying to see if maybe we could go like Samuel Hurst and then someone else, but that just doesn't leave us enough salary. Maybe we can go Russell Gage, Samuel. Yeah, we could do that. That leaves us enough to play Mike Davis. So that's actually a lineup that we could do where we don't play the kickers. We kind of fade the kickers, fade the defenses, and hope we get some points from these cheap receivers. If I'm playing a cheap receiver or any cheap receivers, it's going to be Gage and Samuel. I really have no interest in like Zacchaeus or Ian Thomas or Brian Hill. Like, this is just a really tough Showdown slate, man. The value is just so, there's just no value that you're confident in. Curtis Samuel could get 6 to 7 targets. He could also get, 2 to 4 targets. We just don't really know. His floor is very low. His ceiling is pretty low as well. It's not like we need a big game from him, but he's not a guy that I'm too confident in. But does he have a higher ceiling than the kickers? Probably. Does Russell Gage have a path to 15 Draftkings points? Probably. We've seen him put up big games at the beginning of the year. Like, he was definitely really good at the beginning of the year, kind of slowed down since then, but still should get, probably 6 to 8 targets here. Got 7 targets last week. That's just kind of what I'm looking at for this Showdown slate, guys. It's a really tough one. There's a lot of good plays at the top, but not a lot of good plays at the bottom, so you're definitely going to have to make some tough decisions. You're probably going to have to play one of the two kickers in your lineups, if not both kickers. You're probably going to have to play either Russell Gage or Curtis Samuel in some of your lineups. And although those guys, you're not too confident in them, it's just kind of what we're faced with. I don't really see a scenario where like Brian Hill or Ian Thomas wind up in the winning lineup. I just don't think the path is there for them to put up, double-digit DK points. Really, the only way Brian Hill's getting that is if like Todd Gurley gets hurt, or maybe Brian Hill just breaks off a long run or something. But I really don't want to, bank on that happening. So yeah, I think we covered it all, guys. Just breaking down everything from the player pool top to bottom. Talked about roster construction as well. pretty excited for this showdown slate. Definitely excited to watch this game. I think this game is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to go over the 51 total. I think we're going to see a lot of big games. You know, Julio, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Ridley. Like, I think we're going to see all these guys do really, really well. It's just figuring out for this showdown slate which of these cheap guys, you know, whether it's Samuel, Gage, the kickers, like which of these cheap guys is going to get us there. That's the tough part, but I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope it was helpful to you. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And like I said earlier at the beginning, if you do really enjoy these videos and if they help you out a lot, be sure to check out my exclusive content on Patreon. If you want to get more content from me, I do have stuff available there. You can check it out, link down below in the description if that does interest you. But good luck on the showdown slate, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it did help. I hope you enjoyed. We will see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.